I'm a single man, and honestly, I'm enjoying my life quite a bit. I'm in the pursuit of growing stronger, mentally, physically, all of it, so that I may earn someone that is particularly visionary, someone that wants to perhaps use the fabric of the universe to aid them in whatever service mission they have. And one of the biggest changes that occurred in my life is when I read this book right here, The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. This is the second video of a series where I'm going to be reading these particular chapters out of this book and analyzing them for the sake of growing your emotional intelligence and allowing you to use some of these spiritual messages in your own life. This one is on marriage. My name's Tarab, by the way, and this is Tarabify. The context is that the prophet, this man that observed the city of Orphalese, is about to leave. Is about to go on a voyage with the seafarers back to his original plan. So he's leaving this city, and so there's this kind of resentment by the populace that, hey, you haven't told us the messages that you learned from us. Please share your wisdom. Almitra was his lover. This chapter is on marriage, something that I know a little bit about because I've observed it, but certainly have not partaken in it. So excuse me if I don't know all the ins and outs, but here we go. Then Almitra spoke again and said, "And what of marriage, master?" And he answered, saying, "You were born together, and together you shall be forevermore. You shall be together when the white wings of death scatter your days. Aye, you shall be together even in the silent memory of God. But let there be spaces in your togetherness, and let the winds of the heavens dance between you. Love one another, but make not a bound of love. Let it rather be a moving sea between the shores of your souls. Fill each other's cup, but drink not from one cup. Give one another of your bread, but eat not from the same loaf. Sing and dance together and be joyous, but let each one of you be alone. Even as the strings of a lute are alone, though they quiver with the same music. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near together. Give your hearts, but not into each other's keeping, for only the hand of life can contain your hearts. And stand together, yet not too near. For the pillars of the temple stand apart, and the oak tree and the cypress grow not in each other's shadow. Incredibly beautiful writing. Would highly suggest picking this book up if you're looking for something on the bedside to soothe you in your journey of actualizing your potential. Incredible. So my analysis of marriage has always been as a way to escape from loneliness. And it's something that I believe we have been conditioned by our cultures a lot of the time to believe is a necessary component of living a sustainable life. Now, I'm not here to bash marriage in any capacity, because I think if two people are going to genuinely try to understand themselves, what better way than practicing patience and allowing someone to make up their blind spot? I think when two people get together and commit to many, many years together, it's actually a sign of maturity to a degree. Though it can sometimes be an escape, the reality is we learn a lot about our worst selves, by virtue of trying to maintain a relationship with someone that we love, an individual in particular. And this is advice that I'm going to give you based on people that have been married for 35, 40 years. Because I always ask older couples when I have the opportunity to hang out with them, hey, what made this thing last? One main thing was that they don't talk an hour after waking up. Now, this is obviously very independent. It's based on individuals, based on individual morning routines, sure. But I genuinely believe that the more peace we have when we wake up, the more we're able to have patience with people throughout the course of our day. We're not as activated, we're not as motivated by immediate dividends, immediate satisfaction, dopamine rushes. The other thing that these people say often, which I told you earlier, is that the depth of anger, the depth of hatred, of fury that you will feel for someone when you know them well is always, always, always going to affect you more deeply than someone that you don't know all that well. For instance, when we get angry at celebrities, when we get angry at people on social media, though that may last a little while, oftentimes it's not going to keep us up at night because it's not shaking our walls. Oftentimes, the things that we hear outside of our lives, though our human brain, our nature, tells us, hey, this is something to worry about, it's something negative, the things that are in our immediate proximity, the things that actually affect our life, those things will always have a greater weight. Those things will always affect us for a longer period of time, even subconsciously. So when Khalil Gibran says to not drink from each other's cup, I believe it's evident that if we do not have our own lives, if we do not have our own interests, if we do not have our own aspirations, that our compromise will be weaker. Because marriage is a compromise. It's a compromise of how we spend time, how we spend our energy, what our immediate goals are, what our long-term goals are, how to raise children. Every little thing must be a compromise, ideally. And the only way to reach compromise, the only way to get to a ground where both are understood, where both are satisfied with the decisions the other is making, is to have strong viewpoints to begin with. And you might think to yourself, well, that just leads to a lot of conflict. But in my understanding of any relationship, the reality is that when conflict arises, we must deal with it right then and there. And this actually goes into just people in general. The fact of the matter is, if we wait to have difficult conversations, if we put them off in general, then we are setting ourselves up for situations in the future that could be avoided. Nuisances, little, though compounding, that are not necessary. But having your own hobbies, having things that you like, having things that inspire you about life, that are individual to you, is incredibly important. And what's also incredibly important is to not impose these things on the other person you're going to spend a tremendous amount of time with in marriage. Now, I speak completely out of hypothesis. I have been in some relationships, sure, but really, it's an observation of human nature that allows me to get to these conclusions. Because why spend time if you wanted to be alone, if you wanted to have your own thoughts and your own head and your own whatever, why would you get married in the first place? The ideal is to make up for each other's weaknesses when needed, and to still pursue that individual journey. My father passed away when I was 9 years old. I have watched my mother struggle for many, many years to find her place as both a mother and father figure. Now, without her having the inner strength to know what she wants to do, what her goals are for her children, what environment she grew up with, she would never, ever, ever be able to bring us all the way to the United States from Pakistan and make doctors out of both of us, let alone people that actually want to change society for the better. A tremendous task. But it comes with knowing what you want. And this is something that was brought up in the Celestine prophecy as well, that a lot of people look for the other gender to complete parts of them, to make amends for essentially not knowing parts of life. And you can feel this. You can feel this in people, that we have a tendency to want to cling to something that is alien to us, to make up that part of us. And we forget that we actually have all the while the ability to have both masculine, feminine, and in between, the middle aspects of life figured out if we just do a little bit of soul searching, a little bit of emotional searching, and a little bit of perhaps forging ahead and setting goal searching. Many people don't go through the process of doing this, and so we fall into this cycle of believing that we're half complete, that we're not fully there, that life is only to be enjoyed with someone else. And I think that's lacking, because as indicated in this book, the wisdom of this book, and also by the loss of someone you love, either through divorce or death, the reality is, and this is getting a little morbid, sorry, the reality is, as organisms, we are pursuing this life alone in a lot of ways. And if we don't have the equation to pursue this life alone sustainably, then when situations like that come up, we get absolutely fucked. That's when the single dad starts falling apart and goes into drinking. That's when the single mother falls apart and perhaps destroys the relationships with her children. We must be very careful about this. So, and the final quote they used, which I think is also very, very important, is, "For the pillars of the temple stand apart." Now, my philosophy of marriage, my philosophy of any relationship currently in life, is that I personally value building things, genuinely. Whether or not it's building a relationship for the sake of future goals, sure. But really, I enjoy building comprehension. I enjoy building philosophies. I enjoy building skill sets. And I enjoy doing this with people. I've gotten the question in the past, do you have any friends? I think I have some friends. I've moved a lot in my life, and I've finally gotten to a point where I'm very comfortable with saying, listen, I don't necessarily want to spend time with everyone. And I know why, because a lot of people aren't particularly motivated to do the things that I want to do. And rather than impose those things for the sake of not being lonely in other people, I would rather say to them, listen, this is what I like to do. If you'd like to join me, come join me. But that, I believe, is part of being a whole person, not half missing. But it's also, I think, very, very important to determine that if you are going to get married, what philosophies do you have as a part of your core values? And if those core values do not align with that other person, you have to realize that the longevity of that relationship is tedious at best. The pillars of a temple, to hold up the roof of something, to have safety in the temple, they must stand apart. Physics. To know, to trust in someone, that even though they're traveling for a month, that they're not cheating on you. To know that someone, even though they haven't reached out necessarily for a couple of days, that they'll come back and they'll show you that tenderness. To have that trust in one another. Blind trust, ideally, comes from an individual character. I once asked a man, how do you know how someone is going to treat you? The reality is, if you're going to get married to someone, you better well observe how they treat their friends, how they treat their family, particularly the person of the opposite gender, and how they treat strangers. And to not assume that they're somehow going to treat you differently because you are special to them. Because at the end of the day, I believe love is kind of a momentary thing. It happens in a heartbeat when we say, oh my goodness, I see true beauty in this person. But when someone wakes up in the morning disheveled, or when they've done something to wrong you and there's a conflict brewing, it's very difficult to have that same emotionality. Lots to think about, sure. But it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And it will make proper strength out of anyone that decides to pursue it. The pursuit of children, we'll talk about later. Hopefully you found this interesting. My name's Tarab. This is Tarabify, a channel about emotional intelligence. Smash that like button if you like these videos on The Prophet by Khalil Gibran. I'll keep going for the sake of my own little journal entry here, and as an amends to an incredibly beautifully written kind of bedside manual on life, a spiritual manual. But this is the last video that I did that was on love from this book. So if you have a chance, check that out and actualize your potential catalyst. This world needs you. Take care.